So this is a kind of a neat hole. It's not necessarily a stagnant hole, but it is a slower moving hole compared to, you know, something like down there. Creek is coming around the bend and it's a deep hole. There's a log that's sticking out at the top of the hole here. And when I approach a hole like this, I usually stand. I've been standing here for about 10 minutes quietly, rigging up my two combos. And my plan of attack here is I'm going to use a dry fly combo first, because I don't want to disrupt anything down below. I don't want to throw a big streamer in here and disrupt everything and everything's going to lay down and not eat. I'm going to throw the lightest tackle first, which is a dry fly. It's less disruption, doesn't cause a lot of issues spooking the trout. If I don't get anything on there after a couple casts, then I'll move over to a nymph, and that basically will I'm using a dry fly as my indicator, which as it hits the surface, they don't think it's a big random ball like an indicator and they spook. What they think it is a big hopper or a bug, and they look at it, they might not want it, but it doesn't spook them. And then obviously I'll use the nymph to go down below, because if they're not rising, they might be nymphing down below. And I'm using a squirmy wormy and a very, very small midge larva, sort of like a caddis larva that's green. It's a size 20. So keep that there. My dry fly of choice is I'm using a trailer rig, which my first fly is a BWO, a blue winged olive. That's a size 20. And then about 12 inches to 15 inches below, I have an ant. These are both parachute. They both have sighters at the top so I can see them in the glare. This is a 2-weight combo, which is very light. Allows me to launch light flies with less disruption, because the line is a lot smaller. So when it hits the surface, it doesn't cause any disruption. So I'm just going to work right below this hole first, because I'm down here. I don't want to cast all the way up there on my line, land on here and spook it. So I'm just going to just work all through in here and then over in that corner, and then I'll work up. I'm using 6X nylon, which floats a lot better than fluorocarbon. And these flies are super duper small. And the super duper small and light tippet causes a really tough cast, because there's no weight to really load the fly or the rod. So there's lots of strategy to do that, and one is as you're doing your final cast here, you flick your wrist. So back and then flick it. I'll show you what I mean. So a nice soft cast, and at the last minute I'm flicking it, and what that does is it brings my fly from behind faster through, and it sort of loads the rod a little bit, and that way my flies get launched up. So I've cast it all in here a couple times. I'm going to try to cast over underneath that tree before I move up. And I have a long leader. I have about 9.5, 10 feet leader, which my fly line can be over in this softer water, and my leader is so light that it's just going to move my flies this way and not cause any disruption in the flow. So I'm just going to let my flies, they're right up here against this brush pile here. I'm just going to let them drift right by that drift pile until they are drifting in a different speed than the white foam, and then I'm going to pull it out. I'll move my way up. Let that drift through. I'm going to try to work and get my flies right in that faster seam water. There we go. All right. Got some in her eyes. like to put the little ones in a net just to kind of control them. Got it on that parachute ant. Gorgeous little trout. These little ones are so pretty. Show you what that fly looks like. Parachute ant. Look at that adipose. That is one bright adipose. Look at that thing. That is so cool. Wet my hands. Let's take a closer look at that adipose. Well, that was pretty cool. So now, since I got that on a dry fly, I'm going to switch over to the nymph. Let's just see if I can get my... Alright, check my surroundings again just to make sure. It's a little bit larger of a combo. This is a 4-weight, and compared to my 2-weight, it's a lot larger. So my strategy for nymphing is I need to get it up into that faster current. Kind of let it drift down, which is tough because it's very slow here. So let me just kind of get this further up. There we go. And then down. Just let that drift on through. Sort of want it further up into that faster current so it drifts down by that log. I'm not sure if you can see that log, but it's sort of where I want it. There we go. So what I did wrong there was I probably mended way too late. I was banking on my indicator. I was banking on my leader to do most of the drifting, and then eventually I ran out of room for drift. So I'm gonna cast and do my mend right off the bat. That way my fly can drift a lot further down into this hole than before. going to cast over into that softer water. See how that water's coming over in there? Wonder if I can get anyone over in there. It's going to drift right on the other side of it. Alright. Someone was over in there. Oh, lost it. Bummer. Well, let's try that again. I don't want to get it on that lob there, so. That was on that really tiny nymph. Dang it. Well, I don't want to spook too much here and come up to this hole, but all right. You seem to be here, so since I'm here, I might as well fish it. Letting that drift all the way back there. I'm gonna let it swing, which I'm keeping my rod tip still, letting the fly line just kind of get parallel. All right. Well, got a sunny on the worm. Look at that. Gorgeous. Whoops. Sorry, buddy.